Caucus, Massachusetts Congresswoman Katherine Clark. Congresswoman Clark, nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Chuck.
Let me start with that question there. I've seen Adam Schiff's comments that, if there are more hearings, you'll keep going. But do you really want to start drafting the articles now with so many unanswered questions, so many leads? The fact is the hearings led to more testimony. The hearings led to more information. Why stop?
I think that you're right. The only thing that is predictable about this situation and this administration is that it is unpredictable. So while we have closed the public hearings for now, those questions of will we take further evidence, will there be further depositions, witnesses, what will the Judiciary Committee do, are all undecided. And we have to proceed like we have been proceeding, pursue the truth, and try and do that with urgency and expeditiously, but not let the truth get lost in a political timetable.
Okay, but it also feels as if you're letting the political timetable rush this a bit. I mean, look, SDNY, the Southern District of New York, is obviously investigating some weird Ukraine business between Giuliani, this associate. This, to me, seems like a classic case of Congress figuring out how to work with another investigative body there. Why not at least try to see what you can get, what cooperation you can get from them before moving on?
Well, once again, Chuck, there has been no decision to move on, as you put it. We are going to pull together the chairpeople of the committees of jurisdiction. We are looking at where we are. As Adam Schiff indicated, we may proceed on dual tracks, starting to write a report on the witnesses we've already talked to, but also being open to there may just be more information. We have one goal here. It's get to the truth. And what we have had presented so far is a very stark and dangerous abuse of power by this president. And that is what the witnesses have confirmed. That is where we are. And we need to proceed very carefully and make sure that we are pursuing the truth and that the truth is setting the timetable here. And, the picture is one that is stark. It is a portrait of betrayal of our national security, of an ally, and it jeopardizes the integrity of our 2020 election.
Impeachment is both a legal and political exercise. If this were you're trying to build a case and argue it in a court of law, I don't think you'd have much trouble winning the argument with 12 jurors. But you have to win a political argument, and you're not winning that argument at all. You don't even have Will Hurd. Now, there's a bunch of explanations for that maybe are out of your control, but how much should that matter to how you decide how quickly you send over articles of impeachment?
I think that our goal in opening this inquiry and our goal in whatever we decide around the timing, if, when, what will be included in articles of impeachment, and then what time it may end up at the Senate if we get there, all has to be driven by the same goal of ending this that we started with. Let's get to the truth. Let's defend the Constitution. Let's make sure that nobody, including the President of the United States, puts himself above the law. That's the opening goal, and that's the ending goal. And yes, this is inherently a political process, but what we have seen is that the facts are uncontested, and we have watched the different defenses the Republicans have tried to lodge on the president's behalf disappear. It's like sand through their fingers. And yet they are defending this president. And that is a dangerous indictment of where we are with the Republican Party, that it is about one man above country, above the Constitution, and above our democracy.
I want to put up another tweet from John Bolton today. He's been very active on Twitter. He said this, speaking up, since resigning as National Security Advisor, the White House refused to return access to my personal Twitter account. Then he asked, out of fear of what I might say, ? To those who speculated I went into hiding, I'm sorry to disappoint. John Bolton is certainly teasing everybody involved here that he has something to say. We know he's got a book deal. You guys have invited him, but you don't seem to be overly anxious to try to beg him to come. Why not?
Because we have been met with obstruction from this administration at every single turn. They've been very clear. People are not allowed to testify. If John Bolton has something to say, if he can add something that is important for us to know about this situation, he should come forward. Take a page from the book of the patriots that we saw come and put their careers potentially in jeopardy, the wrath of the president of the United States, being, really ostracized in their jobs. And they said, this is about our country. This is about the service that we have done and will continue to do. This is about our national security. And when they saw a situation, and certainly John Bolton came up in many of their testimonies, where the president was willing to hold $400 million in aid to pay for political dirt, then John Bolton should look at his conscience, look at the oath that he took when he took the national security position, and come and put that information before the American people.
Very quickly, any chance you guys don't send over articles of impeachment?
At this point in time, with the witnesses that we've seen, again, with this stark portrayal of abuse of power, I think it is likely that we will get there. But the timeline is going to be driven by, the witnesses and the testimony that we need to get to the truth, no matter what the political consequences.
Congresswoman Catherine Clark, Democrat from Massachusetts, Vice Chair of the caucus. Thank you for coming on and sharing your views. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Up next, we're digging into the disinformation campaign. Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor, subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.